Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you live. My name is Rebecca Thistlethwaite. I am the program manager of the Niche Meat Processor Assistance Network. Thanks for joining this webinar today. This is the first part in a two-part series that we put together on human resources for meat processors. We recently conducted a study of all of our members, over 1,200 people, and the top concern that came out of that survey was labor. It's the top concern for small, very small, and even large meat processors, from those who slaughter all the way to those who do retail butchery. Labor seems to be the big question and the big concern. Unemployment is down across the country, wages are up, and competition for dependable employees is higher than ever. So today I invited three USDA inspected meat processors from different parts of the country and different scales, and they're all involved kind of in different parts of the meat supply chain, to talk about some of their best practices. Nobody here has the magic bullet or the magic solution, but these are things that these gentlemen have implemented in their facilities to help attract and retain skilled employees, and sometimes not so skilled employees, who hopefully become more skilled over time. So the way that we're going to organize today's webinar is each person is going to speak, each processor is going to speak for about 10 minutes. And then we will have plentiful time for Q&A at the end, including Joe, Evan, and Bruce. If you guys have questions for each other, that's also the opportunity for you to ask questions. So we're going to go in order that I had listed in the webinar. We're going to start off with Joe Cloud, who is the co-owner of True and Essential Meats in Harrisburg, Virginia. It's a USDA inspected red meat plant that co-packs for several hundred farmers in Virginia. Then we'll go to Bruce Hennessey of Maple Wind Farm in Vermont, and he has a USDA inspected on-farm poultry plant and also raises a diverse array of livestock and markets them in his region. And then we're going to switch to Evan Gunthorp, who is the second generation owner of the Gunthorp Farms and Brushy Prairie Packing in LaGrange, Indiana, and they're USDA inspected for both poultry and swine, and raise most of their animals as well, or maybe all of them. So we will start off with Joe. If you want to unmute your button there, Joe.
Yes, unmute. Okay. First, it's Harrisonburg. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is on 81, just as we are, but 3 hours north of us in Pennsylvania. So yeah, I will try to keep to 10 minutes. I can talk on the subject at length. And I'm going to talk, I'll just try to break it down into three things: finding and hiring, and then training, and do that together, and then retaining. And I'll just throw out a whole bunch of ideas. So absolutely, labor is tightening up. I mean, I heard of an IBP plant in Minnesota that's like a meat major that is charged, that pays a minimum of $16 an hour starting out, which is just crazy for that industry because they're desperate to find people. Pilgrim's Poultry here in town gives you $1,000 signing bonus for coming to work for them. It's like big time athletics. We assume that we cannot find anybody that knows what they need to know to do this business. So we're like the NFL on draft day. We're looking for the best available athlete. We're not looking for position athletes. So when we hire, we look for people that are reliable, honest, trustworthy, upbeat, and trainable. We assume we've got to train them. We got to teach them everything that they need to know. We actually, a lot of my thoughts are still found in that Find Them, Train Them, Keep Them booklet that you guys did the interview with me back in 2014, and it's on your website. You know, we use Craigslist because to advertise because it's cheap. We have a bonus program for our employees if they get a referral. If the person sticks six months, then they get a couple $100 or something like that. When we put an ad out, we try to make it interesting. You know, for example, meat packer doesn't resonate, but butcher's assistant kind of resonates because there's a lot of people out there that are interested in meat and butchery. If you can get that word in there. You just, you know, you've got to expect to pay. I see some other plants in my region that are just really struggling, and their ownership thinks that they should still be paying $8, $9, $10 an hour for labor. And we're in a USDA inspected plant, and it's just too darn difficult. We got too many things, too many balls in the air. We've got to get good people, and we need to hang on to them. So I start people, I mean, part-time, I think $11 or so. Most of my employees are being paid between $12 and $16, $17 an hour. And I've got some on salary that are making more than that. Yeah, that's, so that's really finding and hiring. I mean, you got to be on it all the time. We sometimes just run ads just to see who's out there that's interested. We're not necessarily committing to hiring them. I mean, I'm not acting in bad faith, but we think that we're going to have a need, and so we find out who's out there. And if there's somebody that's really good, we're like, wow, we want to hire that person. Maybe we don't need them, but we're going to get busier later in the year, so let's go ahead and hire them, because otherwise, you know, we're not going to have them. But if people show up and they just don't make it, it's just like, well, I've gotten to the point where I don't want to hire just to fill a position, because it's just too much grief if you're not getting the right person. So training. So I don't know exactly where we sit relative to the other gentleman talking today. We have about 20 employees. We do slaughter. It's all red meat. We do slaughter and packing, and we're under construction to start doing value added in a few months. So, you know, we're a little over $1 million in revenue and 1 million pounds processed a year, north of that, heading and continuing to grow. But training is super important for all kind of reasons, and expected. If you ever have any kind of issue, whatever it is, whether it's with your third-party certifier, whether it's your inspector or something like that, if you can show that you are actively trying to manage these issues, that you've got training records, you've got sign-in sheets, that you've got a specific training program you're working around, they're going to cut you a little bit of slack. And they're going to believe you when you say, okay, we're going to handle this issue with more training. And that means that you need to plan on training. You need to break it down by operational training, asset training, sanitation training, animal welfare, whatever it is. You need to have your teams, your employees. We've got our packing team identified, our butcher team, our kill floor team. It's all laid out on our paper. We've got an org chart. When we do training meetings, we keep all of the records. We're a paperless office. We scan it, so it's easy to do. We have sign-up sheets every single time we do a training. We keep track of all of our training materials, what we used when we did that training, whether it was a PDF or whether it was an online site or whatever it was. Again, that's sort of the risk management side of things. But on the actual, you know, how the heck am I going to teach these folks to do this or to do that? You know, when we started 10 years ago, there really wasn't much. Now there's some great resources. There's, you know, some good meat cutting books, Adam Danforth, Carrie Underly, Ryan Farr, others. There's an incredible amount of resources on YouTube, whether it's for how to use machines or how to cut meat, how to break beef, how to break pork, all of that. We use that all the time. I have a library, and I check books out to my new employees. They get them for 2 weeks, and I got to get them back to me. Um, we we pay to. I pay money, good money, to send people to training. There is training out there. You know, UltraSource out in Kansas City has a pretty good set of training, 3-day training sessions. Iowa State for value-added products has some really good training. The local, depending universities, Penn State, I send my employees to HACCP training. It's a 3-day program. I got to pay for travel and hotel in addition to the training, but it's really good. They come out, they actually learn something. And you know, North Carolina State also does stuff. Animal welfare, we're third party certified through Animal Welfare Approved, and they're willing to train. You know, niche meat processors, you guys have a lot of things. So online, absolutely, online resources are just phenomenal and growing and growing and growing. You can do so much. You have access to so many more things than you ever knew once you get into it. So I don't know how I am on time, but to get to the retaining thing. So that's, I'm sorry, how much was that, Rebecca? Were you giving me? Okay. Retaining, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to retain your staff, particularly your good staff. It's impossible to, well, it's not impossible, it's difficult to quantify, but you know, major corporations, I've seen anywhere $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a person to replace somebody. And it's going to be the same for us. You think, you just go hire somebody else. But, well, you're going to find you lose a certain person, your quality is going to go down. The minute your quality goes down and you got customer complaints, you got customer issues, when everybody's working together, you are so much more productive. Your quality is so much better. So that means that, and one of the things that I really emphasize is quality of work life. You know, everybody thinks about quality of life. They want to have a quality of life, but you spend so much time at work, you've got to think about quality of work life and how can you make yourself the most attractive place to work in your area, you know, so you can hang on to your good people. I'm not a tough Marine Corps drill sergeant type of thing. My motto is when we've got problems, fix the problem, not the blame. I've seen too many places where they want to fix the blame and not necessarily the problem, and there's just a lot of emotional drama, and I just don't stand for any of that kind of stuff. You know, you have to be in touch with every individual in your workforce, and motivators are different for each individual. So you kind of have to get a little touchy-feely that way. You know, we talked in that piece in 2014, I talked about my bonus program where we've got a 2-week pay period. We have a certain bonus. We have 3 different levels of production. If we have, depending on how much throughput we got, then the workforce shares that bonus. But I also have a demerit program that goes hand in hand with it. So it's a dictatorship. It's not a democracy. I can walk through and I can put a demerit for anything, whether it's a screw up in packaging, whether it's a sanitation problem, whether they screwed up the cut sheets or whatever. You get a demerit, and that's a 10% off the bonus program. So money engages people, and it's not a punitive thing. It's a way of having a conversation around that bonus, because the bonus helps them share in our largesse and their work, and then the demerit helps me point their attention to certain things. You know, benefits are always tough, and pay. I have a hard time really competing with certain things, because when the ACA came in, we dropped our health program. We don't offer that. But we do have we just last year implemented a simple IRA where we do a 3% match, and I've got a local person that manages that for us. So that's kind of a nice little benefit. We have a paid time off program. So that's your hours that you manage for vacations, for sick time and stuff like that. And I try to make it easy for people to have family lives. I understand that they've got kids, they've got parents they need to look after, they've got stuff like that. So we kind of maintain that flexibility and that gentleness to the degree that we can. So we try to keep communications open. But we treat them like grown-ups. They're not just disposable office equipment. They're supplies. We treat them like they're professionals. We sit down and have annual reviews with everybody, so that we can and it's a conversation, get feedback. What's going on in your department? What do you need? What's working? What's not working? What can we do better? Hear about problems with their supervisors, all of that kind of thing. So yeah, it's really about, and I've had more than one employee say, man, I'm moving on. I got a better opportunity, or I got to move for this reason, but I hate this. I hate coming in and telling you I'm leaving. It's the best place I've ever worked at. And I've heard that at least twice from really good people. And there's nothing that makes me feel better, because that is how you're going to create a high performing team. I'll leave it there, Rebecca, and let you go on. Next person.
All right. Thanks so much, Joe. And for the attendees watching the webinar, we are going to have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. If you have a burning question that you want answered later, please put it in the Q&A box, and then we'll save it for the end. Next up, we're going to have Bruce Hennessey of Maple Wind Farm in Vermont. Take it away, Bruce. Make sure you unmute.
I am unmuted. All right. I'm happy to be here. Good afternoon, everybody. Our plant is very small, I suspect, compared to what Joe's got at this point, and certainly compared to what Evan does. We're just doing about 26,000 broilers a year and about 1,500 turkeys a year through our plant. We do some value-added stuff with pork on the other end, but most of it is poultry. So, just to get right down to it, we're in a state that is at full employment right now. Many of the people who make up the 3% or so that are unemployed, I'm told by the labor experts, are not particularly employable or not interested in being employed. And so we have a lot of challenges in that area. So I think the biggest thing for us is that we feel like we have to pay at least $12 to start, and our average in the plant is about $14 an hour, and we have somebody up near $19 an hour at our top end. We run anywhere from 5 to 9 people in the plant at any one time. But we also have a working farm, and most of what we do through the plant comes off the farm. So we are able to kind of mix and match and have people who both work in the field and out on the farm, which we find to be a big selling point to folks who are just not interested in being out or being in a plant 100% of the time. So that's one of the things. We don't hire people particularly for processing in general. We have a few folks that are full-time in there, but in general, we are hiring farm crew, and everybody has to be willing to do everything. From field poultry chores to moving beef cattle on grass to working in our vegetable program to all of the different things that we do, cleaning eggs, packing and distributing and delivering, and going to farmers markets. All of those things are involved, and everybody who works for us is asked to do that at some point or another during the season. That does present a challenge on the training end of things, but we find it makes for a much happier crew and for people who really understand what other folks are doing on the farm while they're in the plant. So it's not like, well, that person has it much better off because they're working outside today or whatever. So they understand that there's challenges everywhere, and that everybody's working together. It makes for a much tighter team in that respect. So how do we get people? We have a number of avenues that we've worked with for years. We go through the ATTRA website, ATTRA. That's a national clearinghouse for farm jobs. We have the Northeast Organic Farming Association in Vermont that has a job board. We use Indeed.com and Craigslist, of course. And I will say right now that Indeed in the last few years has been our #1 winner for bringing people in and people that actually, we were interested in talking to. The other avenues haven't worked out as well. We also have a lot of word of mouth. Vermont's a small state. Even though we're a pretty small operation, we're fairly well known in Vermont. So we get people referred to us all the time. So getting folks has actually gotten a little bit easier over the past few years. And I think that's largely because of our training and retaining programs. So maybe I'll talk a little bit more about those than how we get people. Of course, we do interviews, and we explain that everybody gets a chance to do everything on the farm, even if they're more geared towards processing. The one place that we've really hit as hard as we can, and this is another networking piece, is chefs. Folks that maybe are tired of working in restaurants where you're working at night and your sleep schedule is kind of thrown off. Folks that want to work kind of more 9 to 5-ish, but have knife skills and also sanitation skills that they come with because they're trained in kitchens. And our current manager in the poultry processing unit is a trained chef, and we have several others that have worked with us over the years that will be joining us again this year. The other challenge that we have is that we're seasonal. We're doing all of our birds on pasture, and our pasture season ends in November. And so from a slaughtering perspective of poultry, that's when we stop just before Thanksgiving, and we don't slaughter anymore until the end of May. So actually keeping folks from season to season has been an even bigger challenge. Though we do things in our processing plant throughout the year, and we're trying to increase that. It's been on a 1 to 2 day a week basis rather than 5 days a week full time. So there's some challenges there. And we're hoping to mitigate that as we go forward. I think the more that we can give people year-round full-time work, the better off we're going to be. So that's something that we're working on. Training, we have designated trainers on our staff that have been with us for a period of time, including the manager in there, but also other folks who work mostly in other areas of the farm, but can come in and train certain jobs in the plant. Specifically the really skilled areas like evisceration and parting and things like that. And those folks will, when we have new people come in, they'll work right next to that person, and we'll do a reduced number of birds to get started for a number of weeks before we actually get full bore, and they'll work right next to them. I'm really interested in Joe's resources on training because I think that's where we're moving to next. We're going to be getting there. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be visiting Evan's farm in a few weeks to talk to them about how to train on a poultry parting line, which is something that's going to be new to us this year. So training is a big deal for us. We spend, like as I said, we spend a couple of weeks doing just a few birds at a time, and then and really giving people a chance to learn how to do each skill correctly, and then train also on different jobs in the plant. and then we ramp up to full time in the third week with our full schedule. And that's been an important period for us. I'm not sure how that would work in another plant where you have to be full bore 5 days a week, full capacity year round. But it certainly works for us to be to go slow at first. And it's folks that haven't done it. Even some of us who've been doing this for years haven't done it for a few months. So we need to start slow as well. But it does give us a chance to really set the baseline for our employees. One of our big things that we went through early on in our program was having some injuries, carpal tunnel, those kinds of injuries. And so as a result, we want to train people in different jobs that switch up what their movements are, and to make sure that we have a place for somebody to go who might be feeling some failure in a certain job just physically. And that goes right along with retention. If people understand that you care about their welfare in that respect, and that you're willing to go the extra distance and spend some more money and do some more training just so that people can switch their jobs and get out of doing exactly the same thing every day. That's something that people really appreciate, and they understand that they care about you, that we care about them as a person, and not just as a cog in our wheel. And so that's a big part of what we do is injury prevention and safety, and that's of course farm wide, but also particularly in the plant. So I mentioned switching jobs and injury prevention. We try to give everybody 1 day out of the plant, even our full-time people. And that just gets them out on the farm, understanding what's happening and what goes into how we produce our food. And I think that actually gives them more ownership in how it comes out on the other end. And it's a really, I think they really appreciate doing something different for the day. So that's a big part of what we do. We also do monthly feedback sessions with each employee, sometimes in groups, sometimes one-on-one, and that also gives them a chance. We also give them a chance to give us feedback about how we're doing, and what we might do to improve. When we have a major problem in the plant, a lot like what Joe said, if we have a failed test or something like that, where obviously something, our sanitation program broke down or something like that, we just sit down with everybody and say, okay, how can we solve this? And we take everybody's ideas and we pool those ideas and we put them into action. We see how they're doing. We check in, and making it really a team approach on how to, approach those problems has been really effective. We've turned things around 180 degrees literally in 1 day by doing that. So I'll sign off with that, and off to you, Rebecca.
All right, thank you, Bruce. Now we are going to move to Evan Gunthorp of Gunthorp Family Farm in Indiana. And he'll speak for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have a good 20 minutes for Q&A at the end. All right, take it away, Evan.
All right, let me know if the wind is too much of an issue, guys, and I'll move inside. It just picked up here a couple minutes ago. But as Rebecca said, I'm Evan Gunthorp with Gunthorp Farms. More specifically, in my day-to-day duties, I'm with Brushy Prairie Packing, which is essentially one and the same, separated for tax reasons and whatnot. We started direct marketing back in 1998 during the hog market crash. Added in chickens, added ducks, added turkeys, added a federally inspected processing plant, which has now been there coming on 14 years. I've been running the plant since 2014. I started in the plant full-time 2014 after my junior year of high school. Ran crazy hours all through my senior year of high school. By the time I graduated high school, I was running the plant in all aspects of day-to-day operations. Finished off school, was running the plant, went off to college for 6 months, decided that it was a waste of my time to get a piece of paper to say that I could run a business when I was leaving running a business every single day to go to school. Ditched that plan primarily on the fact that what I felt I needed was management skills, dealing with people, the things that I see on a day-to-day basis. Started looking around as I was in that little interim phase trying to figure out what I was doing next. Ended up finding a certification program through the same college that I was going to. Walked into the class, and it was with the Division of Continuing Studies. Everyone else in the classroom was 50, 60 years old, big shot executives from big Fort Wayne companies who were looking for some sort of promotion or how to train their staff better or whatever the case may be. And here I am at 18 years old and keeping up with them in all aspects of what they're saying. Definitely felt like I fit in much better there. And also feel like that's probably one of the biggest stepping stones or biggest turning points in my come around in actually handling the human resources in the plant, rather than just kind of chasing my tail and putting out fires. I feel like I actually have a good understanding of what's going on and a good control over what's actually happening in the plant on the day-to-day now. We staff 22 full-time inside the plant. Right now we're going into our growing season, so that'll come up, and I've got about 5 part-time right now, which once again will be going up here in the next couple weeks. Finding and hiring, I can't agree with what Joe said anymore. I'm not great at finding and hiring, so what he said very much resounded with me. If you guys look here, it's been a couple weeks ago, the Wall Street Journal released an article titled something to the extent of the future of the American economy looks much like that of Elkhart, Indiana. We're situated about 30 minutes to the east of Elkhart. Elkhart would, of course, be a population center, whereas we most definitely are not. We're about, 15 miles from the closest Walmart even. So that presents challenges. But if you look through that article, which I'm not going to lie and say that I read the whole thing, I most definitely didn't. If you look through that article, though, it talks about how we're the self-proclaimed RV manufacturing capital of the world, which in an actual, practical day-to-day standpoint means that essentially anyone who can speak English and interview well or is looking for a job and can, finagle their way through the system can get $16 to $18 an hour in full benefits right from a starting point. So it's very, very difficult for us to, be able to survive in our, not just in our industry, but also in the location that we are from a staffing standpoint, being that there is so much demand, for just a short drive off to the west. Beyond that, we started using a staffing agency last year during the summer, primarily just to fill positions. It's not something that I like. It's a 40% increase. It's 40% of the pay goes to the staffing agency. So it ends up that I'm paying $17.75 an hour for those employees. However, the employee is only getting $12.50. So it's something I would much rather divert those funds into actually having the $17.50 employees rather than having $12.50 employees that I'm paying the $17.50 rate for. But it is definitely an option. The absolute biggest benefit that I found with the staffing agency is that they've allowed me to pull from different pools of people. We have quite a bit of homogeneity, I guess you'd say, inside the plant, and the fact that just about all of my full-time staff are either related or are friends. We are very much hired by word of mouth. I've started using Indeed, some Facebook ads, some of those types of things, and haven't found much luck at all with them. Primarily on the fact that, anyone looking through the internet for a job is going to see us at $13 an hour starting wage. And then the next posting is going to be an RV factory that's $16, $18 an hour starting, full benefits, 9 to 5. It's really, really hard for us to compete on paper. But as I said, it allows us to pull from different pools of people. I had 2 guys that started with the staffing agency last year. A father and son ended up getting both of the brothers there within 2 weeks that I hired direct, not through the agency. So I guess that would be one of my biggest points on finding and hiring, is, of course, any good person that walks in the door, even if you don't have a position specifically for them, make sure that they make their way onto your staff. And then also, if you get different pools of people walking in the door that are good, make sure that you keep in contact with them, if nothing else, just because it is an additional employee stream. biggest thing that I have on finding and hiring is definitely advertising to the crew, sign-on bonuses, whatever the case may be, to get those people in. Because it's something that works substantially better for the team if you've got people that already know each other, as long as you manage that correctly. And then it gives you a better guess as to what that person's going to be like once they get into your plant. As it comes to training and retention, I see them largely as one and the same, in the fact that it's based primarily on management. Retention has a lot else to do, as we talked, the wage, benefits, and whatnot, which I'm not going to get into very much. But as it comes to training, at least, the biggest thing is proper management. And I would very much suggest that anyone who is either staffing managers or who is the manager themselves, look into some sort of education on that, whether that's an online course, whether that's an in-person certification course, because the certification course that I took really opened my eyes to a lot of things that I didn't see. I grew up on a farm. I grew up, you just knew how to do everything. And you just went out and did it. And anyone who didn't know that or didn't have the work ethic to go do that, had something wrong with them. That wasn't how things were. And that's definitely not how staffing works in any sort of manufacturing environment, which meat processing at its base is. My main point, absolute main point on training and retention is to treat people how they want to be, or how you would want to be treated. Before, you go in and rip into somebody for something that they did, think about the roles being reversed and how you would want that brought to your attention. An employee is never going to respect a manager whatsoever if they don't respect the person first. So if you're not on, a talking basis with or first name basis with your employees, they walk in the door, you ask them how their day is going. There's no way that later on during the day when you come and ask them to do something, that they're going to listen to it as some sort of genuine request. It's going to be, a very strict demands that they're just part of a system. They're just a cog in the machine. Second is listen and analyze. If you look at some of the actual management data, that's one of the biggest things that leads to employee turnover, is to not have the person in the fitting position for them. It's very important that if an employee brings something to your attention, that, even if they're just talking, to listen to it and make sure that you allot the time to take in that information, and then to analyze, to step back for a minute and think about what their skills are, think about where they fit the business. As part of that certification course I took, I ended up taking a DISC assessment, which essentially sets out a work style analysis. And after taking that, it was pretty clear to me that looking through my staff, I could figure out which of the 4 categories several of my employees fit into, and how that modified the way that they work, how that changed the way that they work, and how I wasn't staffing properly to accommodate for their basic characteristics. Along with that, when you're listening, make sure that you have an answer and make sure it's correct. There'll be a lot of times that somebody will bring something to my attention. I'm running around like crazy, and I'll, sputter something out, and I'll keep right on my way. Get to thinking about it later, and that wasn't what I should have said, or whatever the case may be. Never be ashamed to say, I hear you, I understand, I don't have time for the answer, I will get back to you, because that's far better than giving someone the wrong answer and ending up with frustrations as a result. The biggest thing, I shouldn't say the biggest thing, I have too many biggest things. You have to stick to your word to get someone to buy into you being a human being and not being some sort of, hands that are controlling all the cogs in the machine, because that's not at all what any of our businesses run on. We don't run on machines by a long shot, especially not at the sizes that we are. Some of the bigger guys, we have a local poultry plant in the area that brags about the fact that none of their employees have to know how to use a knife. Everybody stepping in has whatever position that they do that is so rudimentary, so mechanical, that it doesn't really require a human even. It's just that they haven't made a machine to be able to do that yet, or they haven't purchased the machine. But that's definitely not how we need to operate. Beyond that, you see a lot of frustration. I've had employees leave in the past. I'd like to think that all of those were before I really managed the plant. They lost out of frustrations from not feeling that they had either the proper training, proper tools, proper ability to actually go out and do the job, which ties into a following point in that you need to coach for effective employees. Any employee who's effective needs to be coached to the point that they consider themselves in a lifelong career. And you need to be teaching them in that manner that there's someone who you want to keep around. Because beyond that, if you're laying into someone, coming in and ripping them up one side and down the other every single day, there's absolutely no point in having them on your staff. You have to keep morales up. You have to keep a good understanding between yourselves and your employees. And if you don't have that, you're wasting your time. One thing that came through the certification course that I took was just a phrase that stuck with me. And it was heavy on the issues, light on the people, and the fact that the problems have to be resolved, but you're not stepping into the plant each day to fix your people. People need training. They need guidance. They don't need you to step into their lives and fix some sort of problem. People aren't inherently broken. But I guess beyond that, there are 3 types of employees that, if you look through, I'm sure that each of us have all 3. They're committed, compliant, and resistant. So, the committed guys are highest end of the staff, the people that you can walk away from the plant and ensure that they're taking care of things. Committed or the compliant are the guys that are there for the check, and the resistant are the ones that need to go. And our goals, of course, is always to funnel as many of those into committed. And it's not something that someone's set in stone in any of those steps. It's always something that sits at the hands of the manager to either keep the person in the sector that they're in or to continue moving them in one direction or the other. I find that as we are as a small business, I don't have a lot of the resources that a larger business would. So we have to use the fact that we are a small business and that, I'm in the plant 24/7. I'm able to talk to these people. I'm able to manage that to our advantage, or else we stand no chance. That's all I got, guys.
Thank you, Evan.
Yep.
Good stuff. I didn't realize that you stepped into that position right out of high school. It's pretty awesome. So we're going to we have about 17 minutes now for Q&A. One of the questions that came into the chat was, please compare and contrast what you might see between management and leadership talent and labor and functional talent. Are there different approaches to attract, retain, and motivate and develop these 2 different groups of people? Maybe start off with Joe. Do you sort of funnel people in different directions? Can you tell right away what they're going to be good for?
Well, yeah, no, not necessarily right away. You kind of size them up. I mean, yes, over the years I have identified the individuals who are clearly leaders, and I tend to point them, bring them up as I can or as I have need for them. I don't try to rush anybody. Like I had typed in here on the chat, when I hire someone, I say, this is a really confusing and complicated place to work, and it's going to take you at least 6 months to get comfortable. And I really emphasize that I don't want to see them pushing themselves to prove to me that they can do it, because they start doing that in our environment, they're gonna make mistakes. They're gonna screw up the orders. They're gonna worse, they're gonna get hurt, and I don't want that, particularly on the kill floor. And then it takes a while. You have to be patient. It's kind of the old Rome wasn't built in a day. Yet we've been doing this for 10 years, and it took me, I'd say at least 7 years before I really felt like, oh my God, I'm really getting a good team here. And then you get past that point where, and now I'm at that point where if I hire someone, if they're not going to work out, they're going to get weeded out because they're not going to keep up. And because everybody else on the team now knows what the expectations are. This is the benefit of being able of retaining people and really making sure you retain your best people, because they don't put up with somebody that doesn't care about quality. They won't put up with it if someone is going to screw up. So I guess that's what I would say. And you just, I had 20 years in consulting with a big company before that on a completely different field. And I think over time I kind of got a sense of everybody's got some skills. They might not be the skills that jump out at you or the obvious ones, but there's so many different things that need to be done in our world that I would emphasize trying to understand people and just let them find their own level and kind of push them in the right direction. Now, shut up now.
Bruce or Evan, do either of you have a different approach for attracting, retaining, training sort of management staff versus, more labor type staff?
The only thing that I would really say on it is that you'll find that there's self-motivated individuals that walk into the plant that you'll find yourself trying to pull back the reins on, that, are trying to step outside what you have aligned for them. And it's about, if you're able to channel that energy, those are the type of people that you need as your management and your leaders from what I saw. Whereas you'll have the people that are allotted to a task who do the bare minimum to complete the task. Those are quite obviously your production employees.
I think for us, we actually try to be as flat as possible. We definitely have more experienced people in our situation. We do have kind of management, but we're trying to give people as much ownership as they possibly can in their situation. Some people naturally gravitate towards wanting to be that worker mule who's just carrying the load and doing their job and making it come out, and other people want to lead, and that comes out through their time with us. And so we just naturally we allow their personalities to bring them to that point. I think we've used the DISC assessment as well, like Evan. So that's been really helpful. It's been helpful as an entire farm crew, so people understand, not just me understanding, but people really understand what how other people operate. And so if they're working with that person, they can perhaps have a perspective on how they might approach a certain situation. That's all I'll say about that.
Another question that came into chat was, are any of you guys aware of any like apprenticeship type program where apprentices can work across various small facilities? I've seen this for farming. There's one called Craft in New England where apprentices go and work on different farms and learn different skills, but I've not heard or seen anything like this in butchery, meat processing world. Have any of you guys heard of anything like that where apprentices can, kind of move through different plants and learn different skills?
I haven't heard anything specifically that sort of easygoing. I actually put together a formal 3-year apprentice program, and I worked with Department of Labor and Industries here in Virginia and outlined a curriculum, and it was a full meat professional, and I actually put an individual through it, and they got their journeyman's card, and it almost killed me. I mean, turned out to be an incredible amount of work to do something like that. I had to build out a 3-year curriculum, and I had to sit down and give classes in the evening and give them exams, all that kind of stuff, just like you're an electrician or a plumber or something like that. I still have all that curriculum, but I haven't figured out what to do with it. I realized that I didn't need to train these people that way. I could do it other ways. I could get a qualified workforce, and there wasn't quite enough demand for it. I'll be happy to hand off or sell my curriculum package if someone wants to do it, but I'm not sure there's quite enough demand. There is a class there are a few small classes that are happening. I saw something about Pitt Community College down in North Carolina is doing something like this. I know Vermont has something. Bruce might be able to talk to that. There was something through the community colleges a few years ago in Vermont. I don't know where it's gone. At the university level, I think Wisconsin is looking at doing something that's a little bit more robust. So yeah, there's some things like that, but yeah, I think the individual's going to have to be really motivated and identify that stuff.
Chiming in here, we have the Hannaford Training Center here in Vermont. That's actually they do classes for the general public, but it's also tied in with high schools. So some kids that are looking for more of a manufacturing future can get a lot of experience in all sorts of meat processing. And we've actually tried to hire out of that program, and all the red meat plants around us grab them up. And we haven't been able to really get anyone out of there, but we keep trying. I don't know. It's probably they're probably graduating 6 to 10 kids a year that have kind of a certificate from that program. I'm not aware of a community college program currently. Vermont Tech has, you have to be going to school there, so you're going to college and paying those fees and things like that. But you can, I believe that you can take a processing class there and get some experience out of that, but no kind of unpaid or paid internships that I know of other than the Hannaford Career Center.
Evan, did you have anything to share about that, or no? I did find out when I was at a meat processor conference that Montana has a pretty well-established apprenticeship program that's approved by their state Department of Labor. It's 6,000 hours, so it takes about 3 years for someone to go through it. They don't have to stay in the same facility for those 6,000 hours, so they could conceivably go work for a couple different facilities. And then they just have to take 2 college courses through the local community college that are subsidized by the state. But that program is pretty neat because the state pays a portion of the apprentice's wages, and the employer pays the other portion. I think it starts off like the state pays 40% and the employer pays 60%. And then as the person gets more and more experience, the state pays less and less and less. And then by the time they've done their 6,000 hours, they're getting paid full, journeyman meat cutter wages, which are really good wages. I think start at $18 or $22 an hour or something like that. So it's a neat program. It'd be great to see it replicated in more states, but it's a lot to establish, as Joe can attest to. Okay, I'm going to try to get through a few more questions here. Cindy asked about attracting employees in major cities. So I would just suggest the chef route that Bruce and Joe talked about finding underemployed chefs or disgruntled chefs that want to have a life again. Maybe they have children, they want to actually see them. When we used to sell meat, we hired a lot of farmers market staff that were former chefs as well. So they were great for selling meat because they knew how to cook it. So I think that would probably be a good route in bigger cities for attracting employees. Do any of you other folks, even though you all live rurally, have ideas how to attract city folk? Joe? Anyone?
I mean, I guess I typed on the chat window to attracting people to do what? I mean, I see that there's a tremendous interest in craft butchery, the value added charcuterie stuff. I mean, that's just going off the hook around, but I mean, big cities are really not going to be doing what we do. I mean, slaughter and cutting so much, everybody's fleeing the cities. So if you're in, Cindy, I look at your name, I don't know if you're with Stakowski in DC, I would think that there's a gazillion people that are interested in that, young guys in particular. if you can kind of make it sexy somehow. But the question is, can you pay enough to keep them going? And how do you do that? We call those the tattooed hipster butchers. How do you get them to, how do you teach them the craft, yet how do you also get them in front of their audience? How do you get them to like in a restaurant style thing, how do they get to interact with the customers and that sort of thing? I think you need that kind of vibrant atmosphere. And what we do, everybody's sort of walled off inside we're isolated to some degree. But so it's a little bit different thing. We do get a lot of restaurant people. They love it because they have wives and kids and weekends and their real life, which is like none of them ever thought they'd ever get that again. So anyway, oops, I lost my window.
And I just wanted to share a model in Portland, Oregon. There's a retail butcher shop called Old Salt Marketplace that also has a restaurant. So the folks working there get to do retail butchery and charcuterie and value added. They can also do, they can work in the restaurant side, but they also just bought a USDA slaughterhouse called Revel Meat Company. And so some of their employees have an interest in that too. And so they can actually kind of see all parts of the business. And then they've started a farm as well. So they even have the animal production. And so they've been able to retain people because they're now this like fully integrated model. And that is exciting for a lot of young people who, are interested in all aspects of that business. So Bruce, I really like how you have employees that work both on the farm and in processing. And do you think that has been key in helping you retain people? Because I know that a lot of folks don't want to be a cog in a wheel. They don't want to do the same thing every single day. So you provide a really diverse working environment.
Yeah, I think it's been absolutely a key aspect. Again, we're pretty small, and so most of our folks, no one, with the exception of our manager and maybe one or two others, works more than 2 days in the processing plant. So they get out and they get to do a real big variety of things. And for a lot of these folks, this isn't about, a lot of them aren't looking for that really high wage. What they're looking for is to be a part of a different kind of food system than the conventional one out there. And so we really hit that. We open up our mission for people to ask questions and to make changes as long as it stays with our core values. And that's something we talk about all the time. We're a mission-driven organization. And so if they get to experience all aspects of that, I think that is satisfying a basic need for them, that they feel like what they're doing is really meaningful and important for our community and our region. And I think that's a big part of it. And then to be able to physically go out and take care of the chickens that you're going to end up processing, or to, transplant vegetables, or, move cows or collect eggs or whatever it is I think is something that gives the processing part of what we do, including, packing eggs, which isn't really any different in a lot of ways than butchering chickens from a process point of view. It's, just gives that part of it a lot more meaning. It's the only way it gets to our customers who really need and want our products. So I think that's I think that's the biggest part of it.
A couple questions that came in Q&A. Deborah Ferrara, first of all, she mentioned that Cobleskill College in New York State has a meat certification program. Actually, on the NMPAN website, we have a list of all the meat certification programs that we could find around the US and also Canada. So check that out. And if you know of other ones, please let me know. Deborah always asked, also asked, are all of your workers full-time? And if you don't have 40 hours of work, do you pay them anyway, or do you make them clock out?
I will give that. We have some part-time folks but that's something we set up right at the outset. It's usually something that they want. We have so much going on the farm that we hire basically everybody full-time. And if we don't have 40 hours in the processing plant, we have it somewhere else. So, and depending on the season, that's different things. They might be harvesting vegetables, or they might be, they might be on a capital project that we're working on, or whatever it is. We hire most people with the expectation that they'll get 40 hours a week, and often for us, it's more than that. So it's usually closer to 50 hours a week over 5 days. So it's generally not a problem for most people to get that full time during the week.
Evan or Joe, do you have that issue at all? So, maybe in the slow time?
Yeah, it's definitely a problem. I'm feeling it now because the last 3 months we've been under construction, and we've had some disruptions, and we've had a really hard winter here, actually, and a lot of slaughter cancellations, and it's taken a long time getting going. I had an employee asking me if he should quit the other day because he hasn't been able to get his full hours for the last 3-4 months. And I really try to avoid that. We do a lot of facility maintenance projects. We'll identify stuff, painting, repairs, etc., that type of thing. Bruce is lucky to have a farm. You never ever run out of things to do when you've got a farm. But we're a little bit more confined, and if we don't have stuff going through, then it makes it harder to meet the payroll. We're pretty hand to mouth. But it's a concern. We're less seasonal than we used to be. Seasonality in our world is a big thing. We have flattened it out a little bit, but I guess the answer is my approach has been not to try and save money by sending people home when there isn't work to do. I just bite the bullet and tap into my line of credit and pay them for the hours if I can find work for them to do, because we need to keep the plant up and running too. So that's that.
How about you, Evan?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with what Joe was saying there. And I think the management task on equalizing workload, especially for seasonal producers throughout the year, is absolutely huge. As it comes down to us, my workload management during the winter is massive in the fact that we kill all of our turkeys during the summer, and then send the parts to cold storage, thaw them back out in the winter, and then bone out and grind. So even just as simple as counting the number of pounds of whatever piece that I need to pull out of frozen inventory to thaw out and grind is huge when you have to count in for the fact that, people are going to be sick. People aren't going to show up, and you don't know that until after you've already had to thaw out the product. It's a huge management task. It's something that takes a lot of work to get any sort of flexibility there. But it's, as Joe said, you kind of have to bite the bullet and put the people onto tasks that you otherwise wouldn't if you can find the work. We never run out of work in the plant. That's definitely the case. And during the winter, or during some of the warmer points, I actually was taking my crew outside to help with some of the farm projects as well. So if you can find the work, I think it's necessary to do that. Because last year we did a poor job of managing the workload and didn't add on any of those farm projects for the plant guys, and ended up losing the vast majority of our good staff.
We just have a couple more questions, and then we'll have to close here. Elena Guerrero, so I think this one is for Evan. Are you still there, Evan? I think we maybe lost him. Okay, the other question by Al Simon. Do you have any specific efforts or processes to address issues with associates or workers proactively, or rely on routine supervisor interaction?
I'll take a stab. Two things about that. One is that we do have a pretty detailed employee handbook that lays out that tries to address all sorts of issues, with policies around, all the things that you might have problems with, drugs, sexual things, just whatever. And so it's all laid out. That doesn't mean we have to hammer people with it, but it gives you the opportunity to. And then when we're having some issues, well, say there's an employee, I'll put them on we have a process called an employee improvement plan. And it's a you sit down, you give them a verbal warning first. And then the second time you sit down, and this is a written warning. They're put on it. And it lasts for 60 days. I could take them off earlier, but while they're on it, they are not eligible for the bonus, and they aren't eligible for PTO. So that's kind of a problem for them. So that's a penalty, and it really does get their attention. But that also assumes that it's the employee's problem, but it could also be just personality issues with individuals and their supervisor. And in those cases, I try to sit down with everybody and just talk it through. Because I have specific teams, so everybody's got a supervisor that way, and then I've got a internal operations manager, and then there's me. There's a lot of triangulation that goes on at first. They go here. It's like having the kids. They go to mom, then they go to dad. And it's just like, no, you got to get mom and dad together and sit down with the kid and say, look, we're having one conversation, and we're going to talk out the issues and try to resolve it. But it is good to have that clout, to have the written process. And if you have the handbook first with the procedures, and they all get it, and when in that very first day when they start, they're handed that, and they pull out the tear sheet at the back, and they sign it that says that they've got it, and we've got that on record. So they have all of those things. And then if it turns out you have to let that person go for non-performance, I don't like to do that, but when I do, I don't pay unemployment benefits, because I don't get penalized for that, because when they're let go for cause, and that's allows you to do that. Having that whole formal process is a good thing.
I will just add my voice to having a personnel handbook. It's just a huge tool. It gives them all the information they need. It sets the boundaries that you need to have. There's lots of there's just so many instances that are kind of automatically taken care of if you've made it. And we make it fun. We actually have a little quiz where people win little prizes. They win barbecue beef sticks from us if they can answer questions about so we kind of check for understanding, and make sure that people have read it, and they have to sign a sheet saying they read it and all that stuff. But we kind of make a game out of it, and we make sure that people know the things that kind of tend to trip people up about it. But the day we started using that, so many headaches went away.
Evan, do you have an employee handbook, and do you make your employees read it as well?
I am in the process of working on it. We have an employee contract that's signed at the time of hire, but as such fundamentals in anything except for saying, all right.
Sorry, Evan. I think we can't hear you very well, but it's actually time to wrap up the webinar. We're a little bit over time. Just wanted to put a plug in for the next part in this two-part series on human resources. That will be Thursday, June 21st. The title of that webinar is called Safe and Sound, Creating a Positive Workplace Environment for Your Meat Business. Really talking about how to get employee buy-in and keep them happy at work so they produce safe and quality product, and you can also retain good staff. We'll be speaking with Dr. Michelle Fannensteel of Diorigo Food Safety, who is a food safety consulting firm and really takes this approach around food safety by creating a really positive workplace environment to ensure good food safety. So that'll be a great webinar. We really appreciate our panelists. This has been a really interesting discussion, and we will have this up on our YouTube channel by next week. So thank you all for your time and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.